Yeah, we're coming in great. So,
Good deal.
well, hi, Jim. I'm really elated to have Jim Abels here. You're younger than I thought, actually, because of your historical reenacting. I, for some reason, thought you of an older fella.
Yeah, I'm 37, but I've been going gray since I was 14, so it's deceiving.
I think it might be the hair, actually. I'm not trying to be mean about it
No,
either. That's the thing is like, no, you just I think the assumption is mm, like that's old, like old, reenacting old wars and stuff. Like this is what the old guys like. I'm like my dad loved World War II when I was a kid, and it's like that kind of mindset carries on, and like people think that, but that's not the truth. So you are in all. Do you reenact all eras, or do you specify?
it really varies, and I guess you got reenacting, so that you go to like Gettysburg every summer. They do the big battle they have there. At the end of the movies, the credits, they roll that thing, and it says any similarity between real events and is purely coincidental. That's pretty much how that event is. I mean, they're just a bunch of guys shooting guns in a field somewhere. I'm more into the educational value of it. Going to museums, historic sites, and actually doing educational programs. And you're still wearing the uniforms, but they're either original or 100% accurate. Reproductions, and it's tangible stuff. I mean, you can have you live in a hole in the ground at a historic site, doing World War II or something. And kid comes up and's checking it out, and you're like, yeah, it sucks sleeping in this foxhole. It rained last night. This is what small snippet. I don't have to do it for 2 days. Guys did it for years.
Yeah,
It's kind of like experimental archaeology.
that yeah, that's a really good way to look at it, actually. And it is I mean, it's definitely living because my any experience I've had with it is World War II weekend up in Reading,
Oh yeah,
where they do the entire encampment, and you're just kind of just kind of in there all weekend, and you get to go watch these things happen, and it's really cool. And then you don't think about it, like once you leave the event, you don't really consider the fact like, oh, they're still there, and they're living through it. So that's cool.
yeah. I started out doing Civil War back in not the centennial. That's World War One right now. The 125th anniversary. My parents both worked for the state. My mom worked for the Speaker of the House, and they were working on
Wow.
the big kickoff for that. And that's kind of how I got into it. Back in '88, and then from there branched into World War II and working on World War One. American Revolution, French and Indian Wars. I'm kind of getting into that now,
Yeah.
and then like Spanish American War. The 1890s.
Is there? I mean, like that. Is there just got? It seems like I know a collector. His museum is like his personal museum is, 4 times the size of this room, and it's packed. And it's like he specifies on World War II and Korea and Vietnam era, and it's like if you wanted to go, is it easier to just pick one and stick with it because of the amount of time and effort that you're putting into collecting all that, especially more modern and recent
Oh yeah.
uniforms and stuff? Like you can go get them, but it doesn't mean it's cheap.
Yeah.
You know?
It really depends on your interest. I mean, interests change. Yeah, I was real big into World War II for a while. And now I'm just kind of, I'm not as interested. I mean, I'm interested in the time period, but as far as like collecting and stuff, I've actually been selling a lot of that to fund other time periods.
Oh, well, that's a pretty sensible plan,
Yeah,
actually.
it's an investment. I mean, the stuff that I bought years ago, the pricing has gone up or down depending on what it is, and
I
so
know. Well, yeah, it does have it does have its bubbles where people are just super into it, and like obviously when Band of Brothers and the Pacific came out, like people were like, oh, we gotta, like, people's interest
Yep.
shot way up because they were beautifully done, and they really were eye opening in the sense that you got an introspective into the small pieces,
Yes.
and people think, I forget who I was talking about this too, but it's like you think about a war and you think of it overall. But when you see a single vignette, like even Dunkirk that just came out, like you see that as like, my dad was really excited to go see a war movie with me. I was really excited to go see it, and then somebody told me like, it wasn't full of historical information. It wasn't trying to get all that through. It was just trying to put a face on it, and it was like, well. That is the thing is like you put a face on it and you're like, okay, well, yeah, look at all this nightmare that everybody's living through, and then but most times you're just breezing through it. You're like, oh, it's a war. People, you don't really consider all the after effects, all the home life, all everything.
Yeah, what I liked about that one too is think about that movie. How little did they talk in that film?
Yeah, it was quiet.
And it was just, there was a storyline that it was what, a day, a week, and a month. And yeah, I really had to kind of think about that to keep it straight. Otherwise, it jumped around a lot.
Yeah.
But it was just wild. After we saw it, it's like, man, they didn't talk much in here, but they told a whole story, which was really cool.
It was really cool. I was saying not to spend too much time on World War II, because that's obviously I hate to say it's my favorite war. It's my most it's my most researched, because I had family in it, and so I have more of a connection to it. But you're doing World War I reenactment with the 91st Division.
79th.
Okay, 79. I'm sorry, and that's up at the Carlisle proving ground, not proving grounds.
The Army Heritage and Education Center up there at the Carlisle Barracks. So Veterans Day weekend. Before it was Veterans Day, it was Armistice Day. That's when the ceasefire, the initial ceasefire for World War I was.
Right.
We're just going up there for a weekend. I just kind of wanted to do something over the fall, and I got a couple friends. I contacted some guys. It's like, hey, you want to get together and do something? And everybody thinks, oh, November 11th, 11 o'clock, everything's over. Everybody's shaking hands across the barbed wire. Everybody's friends. Yeah. And in reality, it actually wasn't. It drug on.
And it had to have, because you think about the importance of, you think about the quickness of communication now. It's not, it's nothing. Everything's out there. But even during World War II, it was still very slow. And then prior to that, it's, you have a wire, and if the wire's cut, you're not getting any information. So
a lot of your stuff was done by, guys running, they're called a runner, or, message, guys delivering messages, handwritten messages or memorized messages.
Wow.
And you figure that war, you're still using horses. You're using, wagon. There's it's called an escort wagon. The United States Army have. It looks like a chuck wagon or something you'd see in a Western film. We're still using those in that time period.
Wow.
But we're also using airplanes, machine guns, and tanks.
Right.
It's a weird crossover. It's kind of like the Civil War and after meets the precursor to World War II, and they all kind of mix in the early 1900s.
Okay. Well, so I kind of generally understand what maybe not. I've looked into World War I, and I've listened to a lot of stuff about it, and it seems like it was just so most common knowledge would tell you it all started because of the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, and that's what kicked the ball off. But for anybody who doesn't know or have a current grip on it, what got us into it? Because it seemed like we were in a really powerful position, not being in it, shipping out munitions, shipping out arms, everything. What decided to get us in?
Most of my stuff, I pretty much focus on the common soldier. I don't really get into the politics and the big level stuff. I'm more into the individual person. But I guess to sum it up and just generalize it, it would be, if it was a Facebook status, it would say it's complicated. There's just so many different factors that. Yeah, and back channel dealings, it seems like, and it's I've tried to wrap my head around it, and it's reading all this stuff, I'm still confused, but
that was the thing with it, is okay, everything after World War I is pretty well covered, and we can look back and say, oh, this is why this happened, and this is these are the steps that led to this and all that, and it's but when we get back there, I don't quite understand, and then at the same time, it is our centennial of our involvement. So 1917 we joined.
Yes.
Okay.
And then even before that, you got Great Britain's like, hey, you gonna come help us out? We're in a bad way right now, and in the French, but we have German ships that are coming into American ports, and just with our neutrality at the time, it was cool, but it was just, we were kind of trying to keep the peace with everybody, and as it kind of fell apart, and we went into the hostilities over it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do sincerely recommend anybody that's interested in learning more about World War I to dig into Dan Carlin's hardcore history about it. He did I think it was almost 30 hours on the entire story of World War I.
Oh, nice.
And it's a very concise it's a very concise setting and line of reasonable thought, so that you can actually learn a little bit from it. But that was the thing, is so your interest when it comes to the war, you dig into personal lives, and you dig into what it was, what it really was like to be.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you look at you go to not that Wikipedia is the most accurate source, but you go there and you'll see the numbers for casualties or something, or just any kind of website. You type something in. You know, each one of those numbers, that's a man. You know, a man or a woman too. You know, they had nurses or like things that we don't even think about today, like the YMCA. You know, YMCA is like the gym, right? You go swim in there, you work out. That was like a relief organization that ran. It was kind of like a USO, kind of like a PX. They did shows, they did educational classes. They were called secretaries. So you would have men or women, and it wasn't, it's a religious-based organization, but not everybody came from a religious background. You'd have professors, just people who were well-to-do that wanted to be a part of it, or people that just they were too old to fight, but they would go overseas, and they'd run these they're called huts. Some were wooden structures, some were tents, and they would have any kind of like PX stuff, cigarettes, hot cocoa, writing paper. They would help you send money home, help you write letters, stuff like that. And then the male secretaries, they would actually go up into the lines. So they would sell stuff in the rear, but if they went up to the lines carrying a bunch of stuff, it was all free issue. So they go up and they're like, "Hey, how you guys doing? You guys want some cigarettes or whatever?" And they're just handing stuff out, just to kind of improve things.
I was gonna say I never would have known. I would have never known the history of that because when I was a kid, it was the place where I went for swimming lessons because they had a couple of pools down at the one in the city.
Yeah, you got the YWCA, Knights of Columbus was a real big one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they did that. There was a Jewish Welfare Board. Trying to think of the National Library Association. Is National or American Library Association? I get it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they were real big, and they provided a lot of the camps and stuff with library books and stuff to read and things like that.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of welfare organizations that were like that, and then there's a couple couple private concerns too. And
I was gonna say, like, that's the thing is Ken Burns' documentary on Home during the Second World War. Like, you look at it, and you're like, well, everybody here was doing the thing. Like, everybody here was part of it too, and you just don't really think about it. And even back then, the population of the United States was so little. In retrospect, it was so little that there was no way to not be involved with anything going on in the war prior to or after our joining. If you had a good job at a mill, you're milling barrels for rifles that are getting sent over to Great Britain, or all that kind of fun stuff.
I mean, that's how one of our rifles, the model 1903, everybody calls it 1903 Springfield. That was the standard arm. But we can't make the capacity to produce those for this new army that's being built. You had the model 1917. Eddystone is here in Pennsylvania. They produced them, Winchester and Remington. Oh, wow. And it was like pretty much an Americanized copy of the pattern 14 the British used. So we just pretty much tweaked the tooling and simplified it and made it for American spec. And that's a lot of your local. So the Army, I guess I'm kind of jumping around. So you had the regular standing Army. That was like the full time, the active duty. Everybody knows about National Guard because we have that today. Right. But they also had it was called the National Army. So when the draft came out, the National Army was made up of all these drafted men, and it's never been done since. It was like a once and done thing.
Oh, really?
So with guys that they were joining up. I mean, they had a cadre of active duty, like the regular Army officers and some NCOs, but it was they're all drafted men.
Really? Well, I didn't think about that either. Was that prior to, because of course me being in my 30s, Vietnam was the last time the draft was a huge point of presence in any war campaign. So we had a draft all the way back in the second war that I guess really anybody even pays attention to, or the first one. So what were the qualifications for being drafted? Just
you had to be 21 years of age was the minimum number, and I think they lowered it down to 18 during the war. I don't know off the top of my head, but I know definitely it was 21 initially, and you'd have to register with your board, and so they get the declaration of war happens in April 2nd. So President Wilson asked Congress, to declare war, and that happens on the 6th of April, and the Army's realizing, hey, we got to mobilize. We don't have a standing army that's big enough to go do this, go overseas and provide a show of force. So they need to, in order to have these regiments and these divisions being built, you got to have leaders. So they start these officer training camps. And one of the divisions I focus on is the 79th Division. They were a National Army division, so draftees primarily for Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Washington D.C.
Oh, okay.
So they went up to Fort Niagara, which is an old, like French and Indian War, Revolutionary War fort up in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they did their officer training
Oh, wow.
to get their commissions. And some were, National Guard guys. Some had absolutely nothing. They went to college, and they were able to get in for that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, before the war, the United States Army was only 98,000 men. And 45,000 of that, they were stationed overseas. So like China, the Philippines, places like that, any of our American interests at that time. And the regular Army, they were backed up 27,000 troops in the National Guard. So in the Pennsylvania, it's the 28th Division.
Oh, okay.
The red Keystone insignia.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be our National Guard division.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I've seen that on a sign. One of our highways is the 28th Division Highway here in Pennsylvania. And it's a state road. I can't remember. It's a state highway, not an interstate. I can't remember which one it is. But yeah, that's. I'm having that point where like, okay, I know so much about stuff after this that like I really can't even wrap my head around the thought that, like my wife's family started in really blew up after World War II. Like they had a farm during the First World War. They were farmers. In 1898, the house was built out in Carlisle, and there was nothing for miles. Carlisle is between East Berlin and Wellsville, so it's between two towns that nobody goes to anyway. And so, you look for miles, and there's nothing going. There's nothing, and it takes me aback that, we really weren't prepared for anything because there wasn't enough of the concentration that we have in York. In York County, there are 440,000 people. That is currently. Mm-hmm. So at that time, the National Guard was 98,000.
27.
Or 27. It was 27,000. Yeah. So there are. That's like 8 times the amount of people in York County today than there are in the Pennsylvania National Guard at that time.
I guess to put that in perspective, that's an entire division. So,
wow,
regiments of infantry, cavalry, artillery. If you went back to the Civil War, that'd be 27 regiments.
Wow.
And that's and that's nationally now, 27,000 men nationally.
Wow, that's
not a lot.
Yeah, I'm not trying to diminish it with my ignorance. It's just, trying to wrap my head around those thoughts is like.
And then each one of that number, that each one of those, that's a human being, and when you start thinking about that, what were they doing before the war? What were they doing after? Mm-hmm. Were they able to go after?
Yeah.
How did they cope after that? And it's it's that whole human aspect and the material culture of it. That's what I kind of like about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything tells a story.
It really does. And with you being able to collect, used or antique uniforms and stuff, like you get a name with it, and you can dig into that and figure and it is a friend of mine does that, and he, when he picks up a uniform at whatever era it is, apparently there's a database where you can look into that and see if there's any living relatives or anything, and contact them and let them know, hey, this is where this ended up, and talk to them and get a history behind it, which I think is what really magnifies and adds the gravitas to the whole thing. Is like, it's individualized human history on a mass scale, because you look at the entire world, you look at the book of the entire war, and it's I'm not going to say flat, but it's broad. Mm-hmm. And then you would have to have
just keep subdividing it,
yeah,
breaking it down even more.
You would have to have 400,000 books to explain, every story, and it's just when you actually are forced to stop modern life for a second and really think about it, man, it really kind of leaves you at a loss for words. Mm-hmm. So, because what was the average person doing back then? They're working a farm? Yeah,
farm laborers. I was just looking up different things, on the memorials around here in this area too. And there's one down in Cadorus. There's a monument down that way. I forget the name of the town.
Oh, okay.
I looked up a bunch of names on there, and just different guys, working for the railroad and things like that. Just all the typical older trades that are in this area.
Yeah.
Some shopkeepers, things like that, educators.
Yeah, it's just but there were and the amount of people that there were just so few that it's like, whoa.
People who probably never even thought about serving in the military at all, and all of a sudden they're going to, pretty much whether they want to or not, because it's, there's a draft on, there's a war on. And,
Yeah.
they would, in a matter of months or weeks, depending on when they got there, they trained them how to fight and sent them overseas to go do that.
Yeah.
It's quite a change in a lifestyle, and you might be used to running water and electricity and stuff like that, and you're living in a muddy shell hole somewhere in France.
Yeah. That's crazy. And I was gonna say you're living, and that was trench warfare. That was that was the biggest memorable thing of it, was that these guys were living in trenches. They were dealing with trench foot, which had finally diminished here. Which I got once. It's terrible. I got it because I wore boots without socks and they got wet, and it was, but yeah, you think about all those things. It's like, it seems like there was maybe it's just glorified because of the history, the time period where we had finally ended the Civil War was over, and we had this small maybe golden period, if you want to call it that, but late 1860s, early 1870s, we had this time where technology just took off, and we didn't have, here in the U.S., we didn't have too much going on, I don't think. We have the expansion to the West and all that stuff, and the Indian Wars and all that, but there wasn't like global conflict, and it just seems like we could edify it as like everything seeed okay, and then it's just total worldwide chaos.
They said the Great War, or the war to end all wars, is what they called it, and
yeah,
fortunately that wasn't the case.
Yeah, it just and I feel like I could have spent the past 4 weeks just really digging into World War One, and I still would be just as unable to develop a conversation any better, because I just don't. There's just so much to it,
and just new information. It's like nobody's ever going to know everything.
Yeah,
and there's things that I've thought were I've taken for fact, and even down like the equipment and things like that. And this is how this is, and then new stuff will come out. Soon in history, there's no absolutes. You can never say never or always, because as soon as you say that, you'll find 3 cases that'll say point in the other direction.
Right.
There's always new info, and it's just you just got to you always have to improve and keep going, or else you're not gonna you're gonna be working off of yesterday's news.
Yeah, and I just like I think it's super interesting that you're 37 and you've lived what did you serve as well?
Oh yeah, I'm still in. I work for the U.S. Coast Guard right now, and
that's cool.
I retire next year.
Oh wow, that's pretty exciting, actually.
It went by pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that would be right. Did you go in right after high school?
Yeah, I took a month off, and it's just as quick as they could send me, and I left, and
that's cool. Like I was gonna say, not to dig too deep into you, but I don't really know what the Coast Guard does apart from pull over boats in the inner harbor.
So there's 11 statutory missions that the United States Coast Guard has, and search and rescue and law enforcement. They're our big primary ones. But
okay.
We do environmental stuff. Prevent pollution, ice breaking. Domestic ice breaking. Stopping the flow of illegal drugs to the country. The illegal immigration, the smugglers and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a big one down in like the Florida and the Gulf Coast area. And
oh yeah.
aids navigation. I mean, all the road, just like we have road signs on the highways, we have road signs out on the waterways.
Really?
So build, maintain those. All the lighthouses, those were all put together by the Coast Guard or through Coast Guard contracts.
That's cool.
So there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, they're everywhere. If there's a navigable waterway, Great Lakes, East Coast, West Coast, Gulf Coast, and we've got stuff overseas, Hawaii, Guam.
Oh wow!
They've got a thing called Activities Europe. We're over in the Gulf, over in Bahrain. We've got guys that were in Afghanistan, and
wow.
Yeah, anywhere that there's anything going on, we've got people, and anywhere there's been a conflict, the United States Coast Guard's been there.
I didn't realize that. That's really cool. No, I just wonder, because you are such a passionate human, a passionate person about this, that it seems like anyone that was on the outside could definitely get into it because of the history aspect of it, but it seems like there's more to it if you've served yourself.
Yeah, I just grew up in military family, and everybody's been Army and Navy as near as I can tell. Going back through all the years, and I just wanted to do something different. And when I joined up, we weren't really fighting anybody either, so it was
Yeah.
I didn't want to just train. I'd rather go out and actually do what I'm trained for.
Oh, I got you.
So you got that humanitarian mission, and the law enforcement, the safety aspect, and it was pretty good. It's had its ups and downs like everything, but it's been pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was gonna say, so I didn't mean to make to get a sidebar going,
That's
but
all right.
so April 2nd was the declaration of intent to join or to join the conflict, and then
On the 6th it happened.
okay,
And then so May is they're getting those training camps for the officers set up early May 18th. That's a big thing. The Army Act was passed, and what that does is it provides the government the power to raise that army, initiate the draft, and bring all those guys in. And you're looking at drafting an additional force of about 500,000 men, and then they could bring another 500,000 online.
wow,
And that's nationwide. That's each state had a quota. Then they would break it down by county and all your local draft boards. So yeah, they're pulling guys from all over.
yeah. I'd wondered how that worked because I didn't know if it was state, if it was they just said, all right, well we need this many, so each state give us this many, and then well obviously it trickled down to each county.
Yeah, and like nowadays, you join the Army, you could get stationed wherever with people from wherever. Like in the Civil War, everybody joined from the local areas. Like the big regiment out of York was the 87th Pennsylvania, so everybody's local.
Right.
And this war, they're still kind of doing that. They're trying to keep that geographical, similarity going. So you're serving with people from your hometown or your region. Everybody kind of has the same values and ideas, and they just try to keep like-minded people together.
Yeah.
So the 28th Division, the Pennsylvania National Guard, they're already here. The 79th Division, is Maryland, primarily Pennsylvania with some Maryland, and then D.C.
Okay.
And from our area, specifically York, and the central counties and southern counties, you're looking at the 316th Infantry Regiment and the 304th Engineers, and then all the support troops like the medical would be the 304th ambulance, 304th Sanitary Train. And then of that, you'd have ambulance companies that would go with each of the regiments.
Wow.
Your ammunition train, all that stuff, all that's from our area. And then some of them were geographic, like Philadelphia. They're such a dense city. So many people, I guess per capita or whatever. So there's a whole regiment that came from there. They called them Philadelphia's own. That was the 315th Regiment of the 79th Division. And the 313th of the 79th was called Baltimore's own because they all hailed from Baltimore and some of the western counties.
Oh wow.
Which it was good on paper, but once they got down to Fort Meade, which is it was called Camp Meade back then, but it's now Fort Meade, named for General Meade from Pennsylvania. They were pulling people in and out, so they would cannibalize the division to feed other divisions. And so by the time they went overseas, they had guys from Ohio, West Virginia, Rhode Island, stuff like that. So they didn't have that identity anymore.
Right. I was gonna say, I think, definitely on paper it seems like a good thing to do because even still today, Philadelphia, they're really big on Philadelphia, and it makes that foundation a little more concrete because you're putting a lot of people in an unfamiliar situation, and if they have nothing in common apart from being in uniform, it kind of does get you have to have more of an attention to the social aspect of it because you're going to be with these guys every minute of the day for however long, and the average stint was 2 years. Enlistment back then was what, 2 to 4 years average.
For the draft, that was for the duration. But I don't really know for the active duty side, the regular Army. If it followed the Civil War, you're probably looking about 4 years a hitch. That's something I got to look up to. I really don't. I haven't really concentrated on the regular Army, but
no, I get you. But I was that's weird too. That's a bummer. Like, what if it goes on forever?
Yeah,
and you just that's it. You're there until you can't fight anymore.
Yeah,
that'd be weird.
Until everything's wrapped up, and you figure too. They're trying to keep the localities together This is also a time of segregation too. So,
Yeah.
they had separate units just for that.
Wow.
And this is also the big time where you got a lot of immigration coming on. You got all the Europeans coming to America. And that's one problem they found is a lot of these guys who were joining up, they were so proud to be from, in America, and they want to do all the American things and help America out. And they're just trying to just be fully immersed in this new land that they're a part of. That they're registering for the draft and volunteering and stuff like that. And a lot of these guys can't even speak English or write English or anything like that. And so imagine trying to train thousands of brand new guys, and so you're a lieutenant or a captain in a new infantry regiment that's forming up, and maybe like 50% of your guys can't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I guess having that neighborhood thing is kind of good too, because then you can, somebody might be bilingual.
Yeah. That's so. It just seems. I was gonna say that it's chaos. Mm-hmm. It's pure chaos, and it was from the start. And it just, when we got, I'm sure there were expectations that we were gonna join at some point, but still, you're without any inkling of that. Because after, how far from April were we actually, how far from April 6th did it take us to actually go over and join? It was less than 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, guys are getting over there by the summertime, but, they didn't even start the draft up till May.
Wow.
And then, by September, you had 23,908,566 men had registered.
Wow.
And by the time the draft, Yes, 4 million men were ultimately drafted into the armed services, and about 50% of that worked overseas. I put a bunch of notes down because I'm never going to remember all these numbers.
Yeah, I was going to say, I there's no way I could ever possibly remember that.
Yeah, so I'm more into the actual aspect of the individual fighting man, the common soldier. But you throw a couple of these numbers out there, and it's kind of mind blowing. So all those guys are registered by September. So 23,908,566 men. All those guys are going to need their uniforms. They're going to need their equipment, their rifles. They're going to need rations. They're going to need toiletries. Like, where's this all going to come from? Yeah. So when these training camps started up, they didn't have uniforms. These guys were just showing up in their street clothes, and they were trying to train them with that. Wow. They were using rifles from the Spanish-American War.
Oh, Lord.
Broomsticks, stuff like that to practice. I've got pictures from Camp Meade where they have Vickers machine guns, British machine guns. Mm-hmm. There's like one real one in the picture, and all the other ones are wooden.
Oh, jeez.
I've seen wooden cannons and stuff like that because they didn't have the stuff on hand to really practice with.
Yeah, that I was gonna say it just. Yeah, they somebody threw a brick through the storefront, and that was the end of it. Like, it was, okay, it's go time now. And yeah, you think about the amount of people that you had brought up earlier, like guys ended up as officers because they're going to college. Well, that's such commonplace now, but that wasn't then. Like the amount of highly educated people that would be even freely roaming the United States wasn't a priority. Mm-hmm. So you think like the skills that we have now just basically built into us because of all our school systems and all that. Like it's kind of innate to deal with that kind of thing and be able to process stuff. It just wasn't there.
And you figure how many of these guys just had elementary school education, if that.
Yeah. Because I was gonna say you learn how to read and write, and then you go back to work. Because this was well before the New Deal.
Before it's mandated, you had to go to school and everything.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Go ahead.
Now, I got a real cool, just a snapshot of what they look like. This came out of one of the 79th Division books, and it said, through the balance of the day, the selected men came pouring into camp, all in civilian attire. Their habiliments were varied as their types. Some wore brown suits, some check suits. Some showed the latest cuts of a custom tailor's art, and some were attired in the baggiest of trousers, coatless, and with shirt sleeves rolled up. So, I mean, that's showing all the different social classes and income levels. Their headgear was variegated: straw hats, felt hats, derby hats, caps, no hats, carrying suitcases, bags, bundles. This is pretty cool because it shows like a background, the snapshot of the melting pot. So these civilians, businessmen, school teachers, clerks, farmers, barkeepers, peddlers, laborers, Americans, Hebrews, Irish, Slavs, all of occupations and of many nationalities of the earth. And I mean, that it just shows that, everybody, and, no matter what your occupation, where you came from, that obviously meant something to whoever recorded that history, to put that in, it kind of struck them. It's, we're everybody. It's here right now.
Well, I was gonna say it wasn't everybody thing because no, I was gonna say not to bring current up too much, but that it does always seem like the early answer. When you're having trouble with life or your situation kind of sucks, you're like, okay, well, we'll go to we'll go join up, and that was the thing. And it's like back then you didn't have to do that. We had many we had many people that were just doctors that were like, okay, well, I'll just hold up on practice for a little while and go, and that's that's crazy.
It's always look, whenever we get involved with something, we're slow to get off the ground. When somebody pokes America with a stick, it's we're like, all right, we're going to come get you now, but we're always slow. It's like pushing a ball up a hill. That once we get going, though, that ball's rolling down the other side.
Once the momentum starts, because I mean, even then we were definitely every war is a technological advancement. As a culture, it's definitely the thing that propels technology to even further. And we had just had the Industrial Revolution as as we swapped over from 1800s to 1900s, and the Gatling gun was brought out in the late 1800s during the Spanish-American War.
Yeah,
that's when it actually got heavy usage. But we had that kind of thing, and then suddenly, everything else we had to grow because we were serving our customers overseas, and then all of a sudden we were serving ourselves, and you see the amount of progress in arms and artillery. It's huge. So and it's over a very small period of time, because we joined in 1917, but the war actually started in 1914 and ended in 21, right?
1918, but by the time the treaty's done, you're looking at 1920.
Right.
And there's guys overseas still, after the war's over, waiting, occupation duty and stuff like that. So just imagine, maybe you're a coal miner and up in the coal regions of Pennsylvania. One day you go to Camp Meade for less than a year. Next thing you know, you're doing precision, artillery. You're able to conduct rolling barrages ahead of your own men.
Yeah.
To be able to go from, mining coal and running the mule driven carts in and out to, that kind of stuff. And, mechanized, you got cars and stuff. Or the guys, it's just wild. You go from the technology and just that short amount of time to pick up that kind of skill that well.
Yeah. That's
with, the training isn't like it is today. It was a lot. It wasn't as robust. And I mean, there's guys that right before they sailed, for at least the 79th Division, right before they sailed for overseas, they just showed up. Guys that were drafted, and they're like, oh, here's your uniform and your gear. We're going.
Wow.
No training till they got to the overseas training. And then, there's guys that later in the war, I was reading in the 79th Division that replacements showed up, had, they sent them overseas, and they went into some of the nastiest fighting towards the end of the war.
Wow. That just, I mean, and I was going to say, that's the other thing you wouldn't take into mind is what is that, 5 weeks across, what is it, about 5 weeks by steamer across the Atlantic?
I found the time frame for them. They left in 1918 to head over there. So they left on the 8th, and they arrived on the 15th of July. So, I mean, it was a matter of days, which... Yeah, that's surprising. I thought it would have been longer too, but
yeah, I was gonna say, I think I might have been thinking a few too many generations back, but that's still 13 or 14 days, something like that, at sea, and then you're just there, and and back then, the one of the things that I find most fascinating, you posted an article about the B&O Railway and the troop transports, because I think. Barring my own personal taste of loving the 60s and 70s Western Maryland stuff, Western Maryland Railroad stuff, like that era of train transport was huge. And, the things that were going on with that, they had the big, beautiful Pullman passenger cars, and it was just, the B&O Canal runs down below Pennsylvania and up in down below us on our side of Pennsylvania, and then up into the Alleghenies and through like towards Somerset, Frostburg, all that stuff. So that to me was also really fascinating. Like, yeah, most people are still traveling by train back then, and it's just. And then all of a sudden, all right, well, let's put the horse in the barn, and then go jump on a train, and then go jump on a steamer and go to war.
Yeah, one of the times they cannibalized the division early. I guess it was a couple. It was a couple posts ago I put up. I guess it was early to mid October. They were able to get that done, sending these guys from Maryland down to Georgia in like 2 days.
Wow.
Hundreds of actually thousands of guys. And it's just wild that they were able to but they probably ran those trains all night.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Switch crews out. They had to stop for water and coal, I guess. But
yeah,
it's just crazy. That kind of effort they were able to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and just to people don't even. And when we say like train travel, like that was coal, steam, and they could go about 45. Maybe 50 if they're really pushing it, and you don't you see the Amtrak pass by you on the side of the highway, like it's blowing past you at about 105 miles an hour, and they weren't doing that back then.
That's how the guys were going to the training camps too, the camps of camps of muster and stuff like that. They're all getting them, packing them on the railways. Yeah. I guess to give a local thing. So the 20th of September 1917. So over 100 years at this point. That's when they. Pennsylvania, they sent 2,304 people down to Camp Meade. They were the first recruits were from Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And you put a local spin on it. So York County, that was 317 from this county, and York City had 19.
Wow.
And,
I was gonna say they have something for them over at Bob Hoffman Stadium, right? At the new Veterans Garden.
I actually haven't seen that, but that's another thing. Bob Hoffman. So they got in Dover. They got the Bob Hoffman YMCA.
Yeah,
he served in the war.
No way.
Yep. Yeah, I actually found something on him because I saw something totally unrelated in one of my little research projects I was working on. And so if you know Bob Hoffman, he was big into weightlifting and real athletic guy. He founded York Barbell Company. So before World War I, he was part of the 18th Regiment of the National Guard of Pennsylvania. So that's back when, before it was the 28th Division, it was called the 7th Division. This is before the reorganization, back before they went down to chase Pancho Villa around and stuff like that. So he was there, and he became an NCO, non-commissioned officer, and they actually had to bust him down because he was too young, I guess, under the new regulation. And he worked his way back up again, and they switched the name around. They became the 111th Infantry of the 28th Division, which the 111th is one of the oldest regiments in the Army. They go all the way back to the Associators of the Revolution.
Wow.
So they've got quite a lineage. And by the time he got out, I think he was a lieutenant or a captain in a pioneer infantry unit. So they're kind of like sappers.
Wow.
And he was wounded. He caught some shell fragments. He got the Belgian Order of Leopold. French my French pronunciation is horrible. It's like Croix de Guerre.
Okay.
He got a Silver Star, and he was wounded in July of 1918.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, the Bob Hoffman Fields, he funded that himself. That was on his own, and then the Bob Hoffman YMCA in Dover, near as I can tell from what I found, that's named for him as well. So
yeah,
that's like a local hero for this area.
Oh, most certainly. I was gonna say to me most certainly. Like I saw the first time I saw the York Barbell, the weightlifter that's out front. I was like, what is this? And my stepdad told me about it. I was like, I want to do that. And then I used to lift weights. It was great, and I was. Not anymore. I'm too old for that at this point.
There's a lot. I mean, we got a lot of local history, and and Pennsylvania's always been a military powerhouse throughout the wars. Civil War. I mean, you look at that. Why did the North win? I mean, Pennsylvania's kicking out 3-digit number regiments, like 200th Pennsylvania. We just have the manpower. We got the industrial might, and that's how it was during World War II. Sorry, well, World War I. World War II was like a totally different story. But World War I, we're still having these state-oriented units, like the National Guard and then the National Army. And I said on the 20th, all those guys came down, and the 22nd Pennsylvania, they sent another 2,600 guys down. And then the 22nd, 23rd, Philly, just the city of Philadelphia alone sent 2,490 men on the 22nd and another 2,582 men on the 23rd.
Wow.
And they're just pumping these guys down to Camp Meade. You know, these are all the guys that are getting drafted. And in 5 days, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania sent about 13,000 men to Camp Meade.
Wow. That's so, yeah, you're right. Definitely the Keystone State for a reason is we did have we have a lot of surface area, you know, here, and we have a lot of people that were just willing to go. You know, they just come on down from the top of the mountain and go. That's so nuts that Philadelphia put out so many guys at once.
Just the city. And that's not the first time. You know, they did it again. You know, they sent more guys.
That's crazy. I was gonna say, and I guess we always think that, like, you think of big, giant, bustling New York City, but Philadelphia at one point I think overshadowed it for a little bit. So because the amount of space there is between the Delaware River and the end of Philadelphia, yeah, it is a pretty big space. But the city itself, it's you know, monstrous.
Yeah, just big dense population.
And it's good, and they always had good work. They had, you know, the port come up the Delaware River and you know, throw boats in there, do all that kind of stuff. It really was an industrial mecca at some point, and that's really cool.
And some other stuff Pennsylvania's doing. So, you know, we're talking about Philly, the 315th Regiment. That's the they called them Philly's Own. They were that was the first regiment to have a band at Camp Meade.
Really?
Yeah, they had a band come down, a bunch of guys from Pottstown, and by the records that they had at the time, they said that was the first band in the National Army. So all the brand new divisions, the 79th Division had the very first band.
Wow. I wouldn't have thought about that because that's such a time-honored tradition. You know, the band's always been there.
You figure all those regiments that have the bands, they've been established for years. You know, this is just a throw together. I mean, it's like a pickup basketball game. They're just building the team, and what else do we need? Oh, well, let's get a band together.
Well, wasn't it one of the big band leaders served in World War I, didn't he? Wasn't it Glenn Miller or something?
That's the Second War.
Okay, Glenn Miller. Okay, that was right. Glenn Miller was in the second.
I mean, you got a lot of these. You know, I mean, figure back in the day, a lot of the older. Each town had a couple different bands. You know, I mean, you know, we've got guys play music around here now, but nothing on the scale, you know, full on bands.
Yeah, literal in-house orchestra.
Yeah,
you know, people really don't consider that because even the like I Collect Records, they didn't start making those anything other than 78s until like 1957. So you really didn't have that much music at home because it was already incredibly expensive.
You always go out, you know. That was your thing, and you know, even like the Civil War, you know, whole bands like a town band would go along, and that would be the regimental band.
Wow.
And yeah, it looks like, you know, just some of the research I've done, you know, digging, you know, the project I'm working on is like a day by day thing, you know, trying to chronicle everything, you know, 100 years to the day, and it's been quite an eye opener, just learning about stuff like that. Some of these firsts that, you know, they had. And I guess here's another thing, kind of put a picture on how big, you know, these camps and these bases and stuff that they're putting together. So Camp Meade, by October of 1917, was on its way to becoming the second largest city in Maryland, out of the entire state of Maryland, like bigger than Baltimore.
Wow.
And later that year, they attained it. You know, they had that many people that small little plot of land became the biggest, had the most people in the entire state of Maryland.
Wow. Where is Camp Meade exactly, or where is Fort Meade exactly?
It's if you're leaving from here, you hop on 83 South and then 695 West, and then you can get there by going 295 down towards BWI Airport, or get on 32.
Okay.
It's if you know where NSA is, I mean, you can get there from 295. It's a quick hop off of 295.
Okay.
It's a lot smaller than it used to be, but
right. Well, I'm just trying to put perspective on it because I'm actually, I drive every day and I travel. Like, I could get you through anywhere I ran New York City for a while. I could get you anywhere in the 5 boroughs, but I still can't. When I get on 695, my natural compass gets backwards because of the way the signs are worded.
Yeah,
so
inner loop, outer loop. It's like
I can't figure out where anything is in Maryland. I know where Gaithersburg and Frostburg are because they're just far enough out that I don't have to worry about any other roads. So wait, no, Gaithersburg's closer
That's
Fredericks. That's middle, isn't it?
it's around 495. I've been up there a couple times.
Yeah. But anyhow, yeah, I just want to put that into perspective. So it's like North. So it's like North Bay. If this were the nobody's looking because it's an audio podcast, but my hands on the table. But it's like in this area roughly. If we were looking downward at Maryland, to be kind of where my thumb is.
If you know where Annapolis is in Baltimore, it's kind of in the middle.
Okay.
Or along 97.
It makes sense, but it's not far enough down to be Eastern Shore.
No. It's it's still western.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, that makes so much more sense now. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah,
so
no
late.
problem.
But yeah, that's crazy that they became the biggest city in Maryland, and then I guess I don't know. I obviously don't know Maryland all that well, but like, it seems like Baltimore has become that. Like, Baltimore's the biggest place in Maryland now, but it's so spread out.
Yeah.
Like you get
sprawling.
Yeah, parts of Northern Virginia may as well be Baltimore because you're commuting there anyway.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an odd thing to wrap my head around. Is like that side of Maryland was just so densely populated that there couldn't. It was just like the wind whispering through the trees through the rest of the world. Like they just had that giant, dense point of people. And I was gonna say, so I'm assuming Camp Meade was the place to go because of just the ability of it being on a port, right on the bay.
Yeah, it was pretty
right
close.
near it. Yeah.
It was a big thing of farm field, and the government just pretty much said, hey, we're going to take this for a little bit, and they set the camp up. I don't know if they compensated the landowners.
Yeah,
I can't recall on that, but it's I mean it wasn't even finished when the Army arrived. When the guys who would become the 79th Division got there, they were still building stuff.
Really?
Yeah, I mean the training environments weren't there. The mock trenches, so they built a lot of their training environments to get so they'd have something to use.
Yeah,
it's just wild.
That's a great way to get experience. You're about to go dig trenches in Europe. Just take them here first.
Yeah,
we need them.
There's some groups that were there building the stuff. So I mean, it took a while to get it all ready to go.
Yeah, but and I was gonna say, and not to be like, and not to show my lack of knowledge. It's just 2 years of barely even 2 years of actual fighting. And we were making all these giant leaps and bounds to get all this stuff ready for what became 18 months of involvement in the major conflict before the petering out of fighting and just guys that were kind of there.
And just trying to feed all those guys, clothe all those guys, and it's the logistics are just I can't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I can barely figure out. Like, I know I'm a cog in the machine of, hey, get that stuff over there. I can't figure out how my job works versus how, the amount of effort it would take you to just figure out, okay, well, you have 100 guys that are spread out over this state. Get them all together, bring them here, feed them, and get them clothed, and do it all yourself.
No cell phones, no internet. We're talking like, the basic of communications.
Yeah, just... That's the thing that's like killing me is like all you could do was yell. They had Morse was there, the wire was there, that was about it. And it's like, okay, well, you could get instant communication that way, but
telephones are in their infancy.
It's just wow.
I got another one here. It's kind of tell you about the makeup of the different groups and everything. And I think this one came from either the field artillery or the 315th again, and it kind of breaks down all the different backgrounds of the guys. And they said in this one regiment, so a couple thousand men, one unit. So think of like a company. Say the company you work for. This is like the breakdown, like your company. They said so in this one regiment were 15 nationalities: Americans, Russians, Italians, Polish, Austrian, Jewish, Swiss, English, Lithuanian, Greek, Bohemian, French, Irish, Romanian, and even Germans. 4 different prevailing religious beliefs: Protestant, Catholic, Hebrew, and Greek Catholic. And they said while 25 men in the regiment asserted they had no religious adherence. As to educational attainment, but 50 in the regiment had ever attended college, while 114 had no education of any sort. And others had been to elementary, grammar, and high schools. And they said these statistics are typical of other units in the division. And it just, that's the makeup of the American fighting man back then. The average Joe on the street.
Yeah, and literal just the average just the other thing I can't the other thing I can't figure out is the prescience of our need for things, our need for stuff, our need for food, our need for TV and all this stuff. Like the only reason I go to work so much is because I need all that stuff. But like back then, just being a hobo, a literal hobo on the rails, just jumping in a boxcar going somewhere. People did it because it was, there was so. I won't say there was a lack of need, but there was a less driver to go do things constantly, and you could just kind of coast.
Different time, cool.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. Is like, I wonder. My other thought was like, I wonder if World War I was such a forgotten war because Korea was too, because it was such a I don't even know what happened. My uncle was in it, and my uncle had problems. Like, I didn't like going hunting with my grand uncle because he had problems when the woods got quiet. But he was a Korea vet, and he never told me what he did. I don't really know anything about the Korean War, but I don't know the same about World War I because I just don't think there's enough of a perspective on it. That like, yeah, you really do have to sit and break yourself down and say, okay, look, you have to think about this. Life was just, it was okay to go roam. It was okay to not, kill yourself for the sake of a job. Nobody was rushing around and all this stuff. And then we were just like, oh, well, let's go to war. And we don't know how, but we're going to wing it and do it. And we did it. I think that's the other, the other reason people focus so little on it is, and it's overshadowed by the Second World War because, as the books go, it does feel like that giant pop at the end of the war was what led us into the, that was definitely that was definitely the head of the dragon into the second, where it was, hey, look at all this great stuff that we did. We should advance it a little further while we have time, and we should figure out all this stuff and build everything up. And then we did, and then everybody had a whole bunch of great toys, and they were like, all right, let's do this again. So
just trying to handle that, unfinished business from the previous one,
yeah.
Whoever was in charge was like, well, maybe we should have done it this way.
Yeah. And at some point it just became like, that was the other thing was the fiscal aspect of all of it was like, we were great. We were the number one spot because we were the number one supplier, and then we went and we lost a lot of people. We lost a lot of our force over there. So did everyone else. And it just got to a point where everybody was like, all right, we're out of money and we're out of people. This has to end.
And it's like all those guys coming in, how you paying for that,
Yeah.
So they had what was called the Liberty bonds, our Liberty Loan Drive. And they would hit the military camps up and everybody else too, but there was competitions amongst the camps, to raise money. So you would purchase these bonds, and so many dollars would be worth so much, and it was kind of like a loan to the government in a way, to help the war effort out. And the guys from the 79th Division and one of the Pennsylvania units, they took the lead on that.
Really?
Yeah, they had. They gathered everybody together. It was one of their first parades. Everybody formed up with their stuff and everything, and the commanding general addressed them and explained what it was about. And what does it say came in here? They had a competition amongst the units of the division, as well as other similar organizations throughout the nation. In the end, they ended up raising $81,700,000 just from the 79th Division.
Wow,
that's a lot of money. I mean, figure that 1917, that's a lot of money.
That I was gonna say that's a staggering amount. The inflation rate, that's a staggering amount of money.
And if you're just a regular private entry level guy, you're making about $30 a month.
Yeah.
And if you're married, they're docking $15 from that.
Really?
Yeah. It's mandatory to send home to your family.
Oh.
So you don't have a choice. You can't gamble it, drink it, or whatever. It's like that's going home to your family, your spouse, or if your children. That's what they just cut that right out of there.
Yeah, that's actually a super beautiful idea. That
sure
totally makes sense. Yeah.
But that's a lot. You figure all that amount of money was raised off that kind of a paycheck. And the 315th Infantry, they ended up raising, just this one regiment alone, raised $233,700 out of one regiment. That's the Philly guy. So
Wow.
yeah, maybe they got a little bit more money,
Yeah, even that would be enough to last you a lifetime.
Yeah, that's
You
I mean, that's a
know,
lot back then. But
uh,
in a way,
yeah,
they kind of paid for their own stuff, and it's like
yeah.
they bought their own gear.
They're their own booster club. Like the team needs uniforms. All right, everybody pay up. Let's do it. That is. It seemed. I was gonna say it seems like a kind of outside in. Just that seems ridiculous. You're giving all your payback. It's like yeah, but your meals are covered. You're okay. You're gonna get your ration packs when you get over there. Cigarettes were the biggest thing that like everything will be fine. You're comfortable. You just you hang on to this for a while. Like just give it back. Just I'll take it back then later. Don't worry about it.
And like previous wars, like Civil War. I just keep going back to that because it's just the subject matter I'm pretty good with. So you had a uniform allowance. You were allotted per month, for your uniforms, or you were allotted, so many items per year or per quarter. So they did away with that for the first war, and all your uniforms and equipment were government property.
Oh, okay.
So if something happened to it, you would draw a new one. And they had the thing they would salvage. Once they got overseas, it was called salvage. So, the captain would come up to us and they'd come in a room here and say, "Hey, here's the packing list. This is what we're taking with us. If it's not on the list, it doesn't go." They found out early with some of the units that went over in the beginning. The Red Cross is sending like sweater vests and knit watch caps and scarves, and all these other organizations, and mom and grandma are sending stuff over, and all the towns are like, "Oh, let's help the guys out that are overseas. What do they need? Oh, they need stuff they need socks."
Yeah.
So these guys were getting burdened down with all this stuff, and
Oh, I gotcha.
they're just like, yeah, they're useless by the time they get to the line. So they said, anything wasn't on the list, it's gone.
Yeah.
You brought books with you because you're like, hey, I want to read.
Yeah.
Books are salvaged. You don't need those at the front. So it was very specific what was on this. So if it would be salvaged out.
Ah.
And some of the orders I've read too for this division, your pack would be packed a certain way, and the packs back then had like two parts, and the bottom half was the top half was made just for your rations really. The bottom half would be like socks, underwear, half a tent. You'd have to pair up with somebody. You'd have a blanket, stuff like that. But the bottom one was pretty much interchangeable, so they would collect those. You would probably never see your bottom pack again.
Yeah.
But they were all the same. You might have different sizes.
Oh, that's cool.
And so,
It seems. I was gonna say, yeah. Well, actually, they collect it from. No. Anyway, but yeah, it seems good that it's such an interchangeable thing because you're right. Like, well, it's there. Like, well, if it's gonna lay there, let's not leave it lay there. And if we're gonna need it, why not make it fit everything else?
Yeah.
Let's
they would collect them up, and that was one of the accounts I read too. And they said, after. So they went into the Meuse-Argonne offensive. That was their big first action when they got there. And they said one of the things that was kind of a downer when they came back is when guys were claiming their bedrolls, the bottom part of their pack, there was a lot that were still there. The guys that didn't make it to claim those.
Yeah. It just, yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's almost morale defeating just completely. Because, you don't really, even in the moment, you wouldn't, there's no possible way you'd put that into perspective. And you'd like, and the gravity of a large pile of them, like that's a lot that are left. Oh wow! And just for I was gonna say, I was listening to something the one day, and they were like, yeah, just remember, casualty means wounded too.
Yes.
So a lot of guys were disappearing into the they would get hit and go into the hospital. So like that's so weird that became like a that's the big scary word. It's like casualties like.
Or sickness. Yeah, sickness was a big thing too.
Yeah, it seems like that one was it was so easy to pass anything. Like as soon as you caught anything, you're gonna pass it on because you're in such a small space. You're cramped up, and everybody's running by each other, and everybody's near each other. Just if somebody gets the flu, everybody else is gonna get it.
Yeah, everybody's living in tight quarters, and
yeah, that's the other thing I can't handle. Like. Just for anybody who hasn't been in the studio, but like perspective is like wasn't the trench like about as wide as this table?
Yeah, it depended on what kind they were and what stage they were. Yeah. I mean that's pretty decent. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in it for a while, you're gonna be improving it, so they're gonna get better.
Yeah.
As you're there, but I mean those initial ones, they'd just be little ruts in the ground that you would dig in. And you got to figure too, the trench warfare was the big part of the early part of the war. And when the 79th Division, those guys were Camp Meade, they actually had British and French officers come over, subject matter experts and things like automatic weapons, like the French had the Show. It's like it's kind of like our BAR, but it's their version. And it's just an automatic rifle. And so they had that, or experts in artillery or gas warfare, things like that. And they came over to all these American camps, and they served as trainers and facilitators to help get them ready. And that's where that paradigm shift kind of happened too, is the trench warfare went to open warfare, because we're starting to take ground. So they had to switch that over. And then when you end up going overseas, you had the theater training, which the 79th Division, I mean, they kind of got a raw deal. They formed so quickly. They gutted the regiment, a couple times. They're bringing new draftees, guys who don't even know what's going on. They're dropping them off, hey, we're getting ready to go France. You guys are coming with us, kind of thing.
Right.
And then the theater training in France was supposed to be a specified amount of time, but they didn't get the whole thing. Oh. And that's where they're teaching you a lot of the stuff. And, well, you figure over in America, we have our uniforms, we have all our gear. They didn't transport the artillery over. They were using French 75 millimeter howitzers.
Wow.
Horses and stuff, they're using what's over there, because they're trying to get the the machines and stuff over.
Right.
And the hat, they're wearing hats. They're wearing felt hats. Like if you look at like a drill instructor in the Army, campaign hats. That's what the American Army's wearing. Oh, wow. And they got leggings on at the lower part of their trousers. So if you look at the typical World War II soldier, those little canvas leggings they're wearing. Yeah. Yeah, that's what they're wearing when they go overseas. When they arrive in Europe, they're turning those hats in. They're getting those steel helmets, like what you see the British wear, or just what you're used to seeing a World War I soldier wearing. Those leggings are going away. You're getting these. They're called puttees. It's a Puttee, and it's a leg wrap. So if you're looking at like the World War II Japanese Army, that kind of stuff, and it's better. I mean, the leggings are closed with a lace that breaks. It's useless. Where this is a strip of cloth that you wind around your leg. Oh, okay. And it's wool, so even when it's wet, it's going to have somewhat of a thermal property.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was gonna say. I found the other day that like wool. I was thinking about going elk hunting, and somebody said you should get heavy wool thermals, because even if you're soaking wet, they'll still keep you warm.
And it still wicks moisture away. Where with cotton, it just stays.
Yeah. So
and they're getting overseas. They're getting their gas masks, their respirators. They trained with them, but they didn't have them when they went overseas. The first guys going over they're using British respirators.
Oh, geez.
British helmets. They're getting trench knives. They're real nasty looking things. They have like brass. The later ones were like brass knuckles with a blade, but the 1917 model was this. It was really gnarly looking. It had it was like a knuckle duster kind of thing with a 3-pointed blade. It was like a spike.
Okay, yeah.
Just made for mixing it up in close quarters. And that's the kind of stuff that they're getting issued. And then their first action is the Meuse-Argonne offensive, and they kind of got a raw deal for that one. The 79th Division did, because they got thrown into it. They didn't have all their training and all that, and they did pretty well. And they had a really tough thing that they had to take care of. Their area was just a rotten area. And they got a lot of criticism from it. And I've read a lot of dispatches and the records, and you're reading some of the stuff these generals and these high ups are writing, and it's like, man, you're a jerk, I mean, the orders are one thing, but it's like such a condescending tone, Yeah. It's like, oh, the draftees are here kind of thing. And it's like they just did something like crazy. Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, Meuse-Argonne, that was in France. That was an objective in France, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. To this day, it is the largest offensive the United States Army has ever carried out. Okay. And you're looking at over 1 million men. Just men can put in that. If you want to put that into perspective, D-Day, the D-Day invasion, 156,000 men. Whoa. Compared to 1 million. So 1 million men for like 3 months. The Battle of Gettysburg, both sides added together, you're looking at about 180,000. Whoa. Or the Vietnam War, the entire Vietnam War, the entire American involvement, you're looking at about 2,709,000. Whoa. Where you had 1,200,000 for 3 months.
Whoa. That's
a lot of men.
That's wow.
And then that's up against 450,000, Germans, Austrians. and 380 tanks, 840 airplanes. Artillery, you're looking at almost 3,000 pieces of artillery.
Wow.
And just casualties for that, for the entire American Army, you're looking at 26,000. Just a little over 26,000 killed.
Wow.
And Gettysburg was 180,000.
Whoa.
Wounded is that's anything. You're at about 98,000 wounded.
Whoa. That's so crazy.
Yeah, it's like that's a lot of gas warfare, things like that.
Yeah.
And that was a 3-phase offensive. And they went through. They got in the end of September, and they went in and they mixed it up a bit, and they captured their objectives. They were a little slow on stuff, but they captured Malincourt, Montfaucon. That's just I'm horrible at the French pronunciation, so I apologize to anybody who is good at that that's listening. And I can't pronounce the other one that they got on the 28th, but they got relieved on the 30th. So they were in action from the 26th to 30th, but it was just a mess. They went up against just a lot of crazy stuff, and they had a lot of brand new equipment. John Browning, the guy who's the arms manufacturer, that company, the BAR that you hear about in World War II, it was first used in World War I, and the 79th Division was one of the first units to use it.
Really?
The brand new, fresh off the line automatic rifle, the Browning machine gun, the big water cooled machine gun. So if you watch the Pacific, the guns they were using with John Basilone, pretty much like that. The first variant of that.
Oh wow!
They were one of the first divisions to use that. So they had all this brand new equipment and everything, and it just they did well, but it's just it was a tough road to hoe, I guess, as they say.
Yeah, that I was gonna say. You add on. You add on the just new stuff and new stuff is you think new stuff is like Christmas. It's like no, we don't know what we're doing. And we already don't know what we're like these guys are coming over and they're just there and they're already getting thrown into a whirlwind force of confusion and you're adding on to it and just for any of them to have walked away it's to in the end to have been successful with any part of it, it's like that's huge.
Like I say, everything looks good on paper too. You got the supply plan, the signal plan. We're all set up. We got all this figured out. We're ready to go. All right, let's go. Then first action, throw the plan out the window because it's not going to work. The plan was hot meals are going to come up at least twice a day. Pre-dawn or at nighttime. From rolling kitchens and ammunition's coming up and water's coming up. There's like one main road in their area, and it was destroyed. I mean, it was just pockmarked with artillery.
Oh,
they couldn't bring stuff up, so these guys, didn't eat for like 2 days at a clip.
Wow.
And water was out, and that's one of the things. Like, hey, our guys are getting tired. They're hungry. They're thirsty, and one of the replies back from the high ups is just like, keep going.
Yeah.
It's like, well, and they didn't. It's not like today where like, oh, I got to keep my calories up, and I'm burning. I got to eat this much to burn this much kind of thing. They weren't thinking, in that way back then.
Right.
So, I mean, these guys they were used up by the time they got out.
Yeah.
And they put them in it's called a place called Troyon. And they were, it was kind of a static line, but it was still active. They're getting shelled, they're getting gassed and stuff like that. And even during, when they were over in the Musargan part of it, I mean, they were getting gassed and just lit up with that kind of stuff. And
yeah.
So they were over there for most of October, and then they put them back in for the third offensive, and that was real nasty. And that's when they got a whole bunch of new guys in Troyon to get ready.
Wow.
And guys had never done anything, and they're taking them their first fight. They're going into some of the nastiest stuff.
Yeah, that I just cannot wrap my head around that thought. It's just, hey, you're new here, enjoy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, that just blows my mind. And and just nobody's prepared. And I forget who said it, but one of the great generals said that you plan all you want, it may not work. Plan all you want, it probably won't work. So you think about that, like they sat and anybody can you can crunch numbers all you want, but until like even a personal budget or whatever, you think, oh well, in a month I'll have this much and I can do this and this with it. It's like, all right, well we'll go through 2 days and not get bored with yourself and do something stupid and impulsive, like
or something happens, like the furnace goes out and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, and and then you got to do damage control.
Yeah, it's just I cannot get my head around that at all. It's like just, and they were over there and it just ran into it and did it and just that was it.
Yeah, imagine those gas masks. I mean, they're not comfortable either.
No.
You got like a snorkel mouthpiece you put in your mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and then inside the mask are these clips. You clip your nose. It holds your nose closed.
Oh, geez.
And then you have these glass glass eyepieces you look out of, and of course they're going to fog up.
Yeah.
They didn't have all the cool stuff we have nowadays. So imagine, wearing that 8 hours at a time or more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the gas warfare of it all, like you think about that and they're like, yeah, they're just spraying mustard gas and you're not gonna smell it. You're not gonna feel it coming, and you're just gonna be, that's it. There's a cloud coming through.
And everybody just seems to think the Germans were the gas guys, but the French were actually the first ones to mess with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was initially in 1914, it was tear gas. They had these grenades, and they used them against the Germans. And the Germans came up with their version of it and used it against the Brits.
Mm-hmm.
So, the French, they were the innovators. They were the first guys to wear the helmet.
Yeah.
Come up with a proper helmet. They're doing gas. So 1915, the Germans are getting wise. They're like, this gas stuff is kind of working. So they came up with lethal gases, and they used them on the Russians first, on that front that they were fighting. And then they used them on the French colonial troops. One of the units I looked at, they were from Martinique, which is down in the Caribbean. They were, it's a French protectorate, so they were over there fighting in France.
Right.
Canadians, the British first used it in September of 1915, and the first stuff they're using is chlorine. That'll damage your eyes, your nose, throat.
Yeah.
If you die, it's through asphyxiation.
Wow.
So it's strong smelling. I mean, if you've cleaned with bleach, I mean, that's chlorine. And it'll give off like a greenish cloud.
Right.
And they found ways to combat that. Some of your earlier like gas mask type things. And then phosgene was really nasty. French designed that as well. And they say it smells like moldy hay. It's hard to detect. I guess because it just blends in with the environment. And sometimes they mix it with chlorine to help it disperse a little bit. And the thing with that one, the effects, it could take up to 24 hours to manifest. So you could get exposed to it. And the whole thing with gas was like a disruptor. Kind of like, they shoot tear gas into riots and stuff. It's meant to break the crowd up. Where, the phosgene, it wouldn't have an initial effect, but down the road, these guys are like dropping over and having some issues.
Right. Did that affect, like, was that an internal affection? Would that, like, tear at your lungs or anything like that? Kind of weird, or?
Yeah, phosgene, I'm not really sure. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one. I'm more familiar with the mustard gas. That's 1917. The Germans created that. And that was like an oily liquid that kind of hung close to the ground. So they would, there's a couple accounts I read from the 79th Division where they would shell in this valley. And the idea was to make it so you wouldn't want to be there, you couldn't be there because everything was ruined. Water supply, food, stuff like that. And it could remain active for days, weeks, months, depending on how the weather is.
Yeah.
And I've read where it's cold climates, these guys are exposed to this. Everything's frozen. The droplets are frozen on their uniforms and overcoats and stuff. Then they'll go into a bunker or something, and it'll start thawing out. They'll gas everybody.
Oh.
And that's a nasty. It's a blister agent. It'll hurt your eyes.
Yeah.
Causes vomiting, internal, external bleeding. You get all these sores. Attacks the bronchial tubes and mucous membranes. And if you get a fatal case, it takes about 4 to 5 weeks of just painful suffering, and then you die.
Wow.
And it just totally ruins you. And guys are they're whispering because that's the only way they can talk.
Yeah. That's
nasty stuff.
That's crazy. And with it just, it's out there. They you fire it off and it's out there and it's just waiting. It's waiting and that's terrifying.
And then they're talking about the rolling kitchens bringing the food up. The road's destroyed, so how's all that food getting up there now?
Yeah.
Guys are carrying it by hand. You're pulling whole companies off the line to just stevedore food up to the lines.
Yeah.
So you go through, you get attacked by gas. All that food you're taking up is ruined now. Toss alongside the road.
Yeah.
Go back and get more, or just go back to finish your destination.
Yeah, that's crazy, and it just you don't really even consider the small things like that, like the food supply being broken, or just being infected, or gassed, and somebody doesn't notice. Maybe it just floats in on a headwind, and it comes through the cart, and nobody really notices, and then all of a sudden, everybody's just coughing up blood and falling over. It's like that's chaos.
Yeah, and I read one account where the guy was talking about they didn't really worry about that. I don't know what kind of gas, he didn't mention it, but they said that they don't worry about it too much because it's it must be mustard because he said it's hanging low. Yeah, as long as they're not kicking it up and disturbing it, you know, kinda, I guess like, you know, asbestos. You know, if you're in a room that has asbestos, as long as you're not kicking it up to inhale it, it's not going to really get you.
Yeah.
But they would just endure it, and then if they got shelled, they would put the respirators on.
Wow.
It's like, you know, to get desensitized by that. It's just crazy.
That's so rough. Like, just that's so hard to wrap your head around, and it's just like, man, that's intense.
And just the conditions. So, you know, you're not having food and water for, you know, days at a time. You're living in mud. You're getting cut up on barbed wire, stuff like that. A year ago, you're a shopkeeper or a librarian, or maybe you're a coal miner or a farmer. You know,
just doing your thing, and everything was fine, and all of a sudden, it's like you're watching Armageddon happen every day.
You're living through it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the amount of just the willingness to do that, and the personal honor behind that, just, and you know, the patriotic act that is joining up and doing that and being willing is like, it's all striking, because you really think about it, and you know, in peace times everybody wants to be a butthole about it. Fine, yeah, that's how it goes. But you look at anybody that's served at any time during any conflict. It's like the amount of stuff that they go through, and you know, just be quiet and let them pass. Just hold your chest high, let them pass respectfully. Be nice.
Just think, like, you know, the shelling. How deafening is that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Just think about, you go to a concert, real loud concert at a club. You know, all the speakers are turned up.
Yeah.
It's just super loud. And you get outside and you're talking loud. You're like yelling because you're not yelling, but you've gone you've gone deaf a little bit, you know, from all that noise. You know, just imagine, you know, all that artillery and the lasting effects on that, and you can't escape it. You're just getting shook up, and you know, that's just crazy.
It's just, and I was gonna say, and even now, where we still have trouble with the after effects of service, you know, then they had no clue.
Yeah, it's still in its infancy.
Yeah, just
I guess you know, the video Metallica did one. That's actually based on the footage, the black and white footage. It was a short film, and it was about a guy who was in the First World War, and he had the shell shock and all that stuff. And that's the little clips that are in that video. I can't think of the name of the text. It just came to me, but some of the treatments and stuff, they were just still trying to figure out, like, what's wrong with these guys. And there's stuff on YouTube that you can look at, and the guys are just twitchy, and I mean, it looks like somebody just, you know, got a hold of some bad stuff, and just, I mean, like some of the stuff you see on the news now, and these guys are just shattered, you know.
Oh yeah,
just real emotional, and it's just wild. And
the other, like, and I was gonna say, and not to run off on a tangent or anything, but you know, the guys now, they know what's coming, and they mask it. And just some guys, like, I forget what movie that was with Jake Gyllenhaal in it. But like, you looked at him and he was like, he's okay. But you looked at his eyes, and you're like, oh no, you know, these guys are coming back, and they have these little signs, and you just don't notice it. You know?
And think about, like, our involvement. It started in 1914, and newspapers are broadcasting it. You know, you're reading about the news of the war and how horrible it is, but you're still joining up in 1917, whether you want to or not at that point. But you know what you're getting. It's not a surprise. You know what's awaiting you. Yeah, the kind of stuff that's going on over there. Yeah,
that's just, like, you know, it's crazy. And I mean, anybody that's served any time just has my utmost, you know, respect and love for what they do, because I missed my opportunity to go because of being an idiot and making bad decisions on the outside. So, you know, I didn't get the chance to go, and it's just like, well, you went. That's insane. You know, I can't imagine putting yourself through that now or then or anything. You know, and so
you think about how, you know, wars end. You know, you're beating somebody. You got them in a corner. They had some planning going on, you know, to reach a point to have an armistice. So, you know, they narrowed it down to the 11th hour of the 11th day, Paris time. So this was decided before, you know, it wasn't like that day. They knew it was going to end on that day, but they're still fighting. Yeah. It's like, how asinine is that? It's like, we're just going to keep fighting and try to gain more ground. We know it's going to end, but let's just keep going. Like,
Yeah,
who does that?
Let's make sure that let's push our faces down in the mud just a little further because we can, just because we can.
I read an account this afternoon, just putting some of these notes together. It's the Navy had these big railway guns there. I mean, they were these huge cannon, and they could fire miles. And one of the last shots, they calculated how long it would take to fire well into the rear of the German lines, but to land and do its business prior to 11 o'clock.
Oh, God.
They had calculated that much.
Jeez.
So I mean, you imagine you're there in just this nasty part. You're lying in the mud, and this runner comes up and it's like, "Hey, this is all going to wrap up at 11 o'clock today."
Yeah.
But you know that you're supposed to make an advance later that day. How horrible is that?
Yeah. That's so nuts. And
I got a couple real good accounts from that, and it's they said at 10 o'clock the shelling increased to a frenzied crescendo of violence. So this is from the artillery, the cannons. I mean, they're just like, we got to get rid of this stuff. Let's just shoot it all. Both sides are doing this.
Yeah.
And a guy in L Company, the 316th Infantry. So this is a local unit. He turned to his buddy and he said, "Armistice," and he said this. And the quote is, he said in deep disgust, "Armistice hell, listen to that." Talking about the loud din of the shells. He's like, "It's not over."
Yeah.
And they said the advance up the hill continued until a message carried by a runner caused a halt for the armistice. They were still plowing forward. They got the word that, hey, this is going to wrap up. They're still advancing, trying to take ground until somebody's like, "Hey, man, it's over."
Yeah.
And probably the most tragic thing that I've read is a guy from the 313th Regiment. Mm-hmm. He's one of the guys from Baltimore. His name was Private Gunther, and he died at 10:59.
Oh, jeez.
He went out trying to take out a German machine gun. He went out to go get it, and they're like, "Hey, man, stop!" And he was the last casualty for the American Army during the war.
Wow. Well, that's I was gonna say that's poetically beautiful and morose and morbid and just sad. Like it all at once is just. He still did it. It's not like you're waiting for the end of the day and you're hovering around time clock. It's just we're still gonna do this and we're gonna do our thing. It's what we're here for.
How many rumors? Oh, the war's over. The war's gonna be end soon. How many times have they heard that over the past year?
Yeah.
And it's just wild. And everybody thinks 11 o'clock. Everything's cool. It's done. We're gonna shake hands over the wire. It's all over. And it definitely wasn't the case. And this account says, promptly at 11 o'clock, firing ceased and all was quiet. So you figure all that loud noise, you're just hearing guns and explosions and death and dying, and you can hear a pin drop. How surreal would that be?
Yeah.
And they actually, this one book I have, and I've seen it on the internet. It shows a chart, where they were doing like seismic stuff, and then right at 11 o'clock, it's just quiet, and it's so weird. Then you start seeing some stuff. I don't know where they recorded it, but it just, it's all over the place and then just flat lines.
Wow. That's yeah. Go ahead.
They said, everything stopped. And then this runner, a man bringing a handwritten message to the line. This is the communication we're using. We're not doing radios. It's some guy who's running, everybody else is lying in the mud so they don't get shot. He's running up. He's exposing himself to deliver a message. And this is from the 314th Infantry Regiment. These guys are all from the coal regions of Pennsylvania. The runner didn't get to the destination, so the ceasefire order wasn't given. He either got shot or he got lost or whatever, which that's a common thing I found too. These runners or even the medical personnel, they'll go to the rear. They'll come back up. The landscape's changed from barrages. They don't know where they're going again. They have to waste time to find the way again. Yeah. Landmarks are gone. Shell hole. Oh, it's like 2 shell holes over here. There's like 73 there now, Oh, God. But they didn't know to stop firing, and this one company, they just kept shooting, and the other companies were trying to like, "Hey, stop firing! It's over! It's over!" They couldn't hear them because all the noise, and they ended up killing another German after the armistice. And it said they blew up a keg of liquor with a rifle grenade, and they kept firing, and then somebody, a Pennsylvania Dutchman, somebody could speak some German, act as an interpreter, and he had to go out there and kind of smooth things over. So they were trying to like, "Hey, sorry, we didn't get the word," kind of thing. And just stuff like that. And this is a really good one too. He said the firing stopped. We were unbelieving and we stopped and dug in. So they're advancing, this is open warfare. they just stopped right where they were and they started digging a defensive position.
Wow.
They said the silence is almost appalling, and we expect any minute to hear the guns start to roar again. There's very little elation or excitement on the line, but we learned later that the artillery down in Death Valley were hilarious. So the guys shooting the cannons, they were just going nuts because it was over. For, I guess different groups of guys, think differently.
Mm.
You figure the artillery is more in the rear. They're not up there, mixing it up. They're not seeing their target where the infantry is.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And they said the little elation or excitement on the line, and I talked about that. They said the greatest relief was that you could stick your head up and not draw fire. And in the actual quote said you could stand erect. It had an exclamation point behind it. That was such a profound thing that, oh, hey, I can stand up now.
Yeah.
And they said the word was that real hot food was coming. Not just like some heated up corned beef that they did in the field.
Mm.
And they said most of the men received the news with a wan of a smile, which expanded into wide-eyed amazement as suddenly all the clamor of those thousands of guns ceased and a vast, almost unearthly quiet ensued. It was uncanny, eerie, as of another world, that quiet, and for a long moment, the stunned infantry waited breathless for they knew not know what. And somewhat dazed by the suddenness, troops rested on their arms in wonder. And at first, it seemed strange to expose oneself without drawing fire. In place of cheering crowds, maddened with joy, excitement, and hilarity, one saw a motley array of unrecognizable men arising from the mud, slime, and filth of the battlefield, cautiously creeping from their shell holes and ditches, silently wondering without cheering or acclaim, but rather in the manner of a man who had, by some unlooked for act of providence, been delivered from inevitable death. And there's another good one here. They pretty much said the guys were just used up. It was just it was too much. That silence, it was just too much to process.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I lived. Hey, we're not shooting anybody, and it was too much for them. And guys were just breaking down, and it was everybody kind of handled their own way. It just wild. But that wasn't the end. I mean, they had sentries. They evened the lines out. They pushed forward to the forest part, and then they put sentries out. They weren't allowed to fraternize. They're like, hey, we don't let them in the lines.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be out there shaking hands. This could pop off again at any moment, depending on how this goes. This is just a ceasefire. We don't have a treaty yet. And that night, the Germans on their lines, they were shooting off all the flares and everything just as like a celebration. And there was a thing that said that they had campfires. So both sides had campfires, because they were able to cook. They were getting blankets brought up, and it was just really weird.
Yeah.
They actually had to extend the armistice 3 times. They had to prolong it because they were trying to get this whole treaty ratified.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're still on the lines and everything. And
yeah, well, I was gonna say that was the thing was there's I remember there was an old political cartoon of just it was every world leader at that point sitting around a table, and there were I don't remember if there were, it was either no words or just everybody was talking over each other or whatever. But that was the thing, was when they reached the armistice, they still had to figure out where the dust was going to settle, and it took a while. And
nobody's going to agree on everything.
Yeah. So,
I guess a couple parting shots here. To get back to the ties to York, is there's plenty of memorials here. I mean, how many people have driven up the Susquehanna Trail or York Road if you're down there in Maryland?
Mm-hmm.
All those trees that all look the same, those big sycamores, that's a war memorial, a living war memorial.
Really?
There's 400 trees, more or less, planted in the 1920s.
Oh, wow.
And York Daily Record did a blog on it. Either somebody from the staff or somebody sent it in, kind of mapping that over the years. But that was a living memorial to the World War I veterans.
I didn't know that.
And if you get on the Lincoln Highway, that's over 1,500 trees.
Oh, wow.
The same kind of deal.
No way. I was gonna say, where's that out on the is that like far out on the Lincoln Highway, like out towards out past Chambersburg, or just spread all over?
Pretty much all over. I haven't driven that part to really check it out, but sometimes I work in Maryland, so I'll come up Susquehanna Trail sometimes, and it's right when you cross the line, around Brown's Market, there's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I mean, sycamores are real easy to tell. They got a real distinct looking bark. And the York County War Memorials, if you get on Google, just type in York World War I Memorials, and it'll pull up a whole list of stuff in our area. Some actually aren't on there. The fairgrounds right out here, we have one. And it's at Gate 4. It was dedicated in the 1920s of all the York County guys who went overseas. I think there's actually a woman on there too. She could have been one of the phone operators. That they were called Hello Girls. They would answer the phones, and they wanted women who could speak French and English to man the phones at like headquarters and in rear areas.
Oh, that's cool.
So she could have been that or like YMCA. I haven't had a chance to look that up. But that's over there at Gate 4. There's 2 big tablets, and on the way over to the studio here, there's I saw one for the Spanish-American War. So I guess every gate has a plaque to something. I have to get out and walk it.
I was gonna say, I think you might be right that all the gates have something, because
I think it's Gate 7 up there that I was looking at. It had Spanish-American War.
Up here on Highland, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because I'm trying to think of where Gate 4 is, but I know there's a plaque. If you follow the street directly out, at the very end, there's another plaque. I have a picture of it somewhere, but I honestly can't remember what that plaque was for or what gate number that is.
Yeah, 4 is the one that's over by. It's on the other side by the Expo Center.
Okay.
There's like a bar and like a barber shop across the street.
Yeah. Okay. I know where you're.
So yeah, if anybody who's like an Eagle Scout looking for a project that was dedicated in the 20s,
wow,
it could use some refurbishing. So
there you go.
Yeah, that'd be a good project for somebody. And if you're trying to do some research, family research, you got there's a good book out there called York County and the World War, and it's actually online. If you go, there's a site called archive.org, and you go to that site, you can type that title in, and it's a digitized copy. It has a search function. You could type in names.
Oh, wow.
I just typed in, I live in Dover, so I typed Dover, and it pulled up all these guys from Dover that were in there.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, it's not just for World War I. There's all kind of stuff. I read all kind of old military manuals or just different things. I mean, it's all this way up to current day.
Oh, wow.
You got Facebook. There's Retro York. They always have some local stuff on here, not just World War I. I'm the one that puts a lot of the World War I stuff on there. But there's all kind of stuff. Some of the staff from the York Daily Record, they put a lot of things on there, and it's just cool if you want to know more about your area. It's a lot of the older stories that a lot of the old timers know that aren't getting passed down. A lot of guys are putting them on there.
Yeah, that's actually really cool, because there are there's a lot of history in personal history, and just some people don't realize, oh yeah, you could just put it somewhere and let everybody know. It's like, no, I'll just tell my kids and hope they pass it on.
Yeah, I mean, I moved up here last year, and I mean, I've learned so much about this. I'm from Harrisburg originally, so I'm new to York, but I've learned so much on this area just from that page. It's like a group, and I think it's an open group. You just click to join. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I think I'm part of that too. So yeah, probably.
And the page I run is 79th Division Historical Group. It's on Facebook, and I'm doing a day-by-day program, so every day that I can find something, I program all these posts out, and it's going to cover the whole division all the way till they come home. So it'll be 2019 for 1919, and then I'm gonna hang it up. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, putting this together.
That was the other thing I was gonna say. I know we're in the wrap up, but that was the other thing is you are doing it just the most immense amount of work about a subject, and like it's just purely for the sake of passion. Like
getting it out there.
And you think and to really put that into perspective is like you're doing a day by day. I don't even pay attention to the podcast every day, and I'm usually like 2 days out of the week I'm really focused on it, but otherwise I'm not really thinking about it. Like I don't know that I could handle that.
I just like the group. I mean, it's that organization, everybody knows the 28th, but who knows the 79th?
Yeah.
And that they're draftees. I mean, the current day unit is a theater support unit out of, I think they're headquartered in California. And some of their subordinate units not tied to this unit were working in Texas during the hurricane and everything. But
oh wow,
yeah, they still have a little bit of a lineage, but it's not combat arm anymore.
Right.
And it's just trying to get the info out there. It's a story worth telling, I think. So that's why I'm putting that together.
Absolutely.
Another one that has a lot of local is it's 314th.org. And it's mainly the 314th Infantry Regiment, but they've got resources for all the 79th Division units. That there's all kind of cool stuff in there. And so that's worth a read. You go up to Harrisburg, you have the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission, and their archives are amazing. There's so much. I mean, you can do all the wars there. They have so much cool stuff there. It's free. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you got to pay for parking. I mean, that's a battle on its own in Harrisburg, but. Yeah, you go to the archives. I think you got to register now to go do that. You get like a license to register. I don't think it costs anything, but it's like an ID card or something. But they're open Wednesdays through Saturdays, and it's really cool. You can take a laptop in there. You can photograph. Yeah, I did Civil War research up there, and I'm holding like original documents, and it's just wild. Now you got the National Archives. They're an awesome source, but I mean, if you're not trying to travel, right downtown, York County History Center, it's 250 East Market Street, and they got a crazy library in there. And you can go in there and research. You can join it. I think it's like 70 for the year. So, I mean, if you're really into doing family research, and you can go down there and just hit that library up.
Yeah.
They got some awesome records in there.
I was actually just there the other week. My wife's grandmother was on the board of directors for the Historical Society, and I didn't know that, so we held her reception there after her funeral. But yeah, I looked in the library. It's a beautiful thing. Like, that's one of the fascinating things is because we have an independent archive out towards the old prison, or out towards the current prison in Stony Brook area, but it's not as thorough or people specific. It's where I went. I was trying to find ownership and blueprints on a building that's downtown, but it was owned by the Western Maryland Railroad, and the deeds are gone. Nobody has I tried to find the blueprints. I was going to make a model of it. I wanted to be scale and understand what's inside of it without trespassing. And I talked to our archives and Western Maryland Railroad's archives, and they can't figure out who has the blueprints or who even owns it anymore. So that's why it's still there.
It might be maybe check down like B&O Railroad Museum.
It might be. It's the only building that I've seen in our area that has Western Maryland on the side of it. So like they still have the old 60s paint scheme, and it's the building on George actually that has the front. It's got a turret in the front. It's a beautiful building, and the only reason it's still standing because they were going to raise it to put a parking lot there for the ball field. The only reason it's still standing is because there's a contest of ownership because they're not sure exactly whose it is.
That's a good lucky break then for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I don't think Jesus, I'm dorking out. Genesee and Wyoming bought York Rail's trackage, and Genesee and Wyoming they don't own the building either. They don't know. So
that's the thing too with you doing research, talking about records that just don't appear anymore. If you're trying to do family research on military stuff, don't get discouraged. But down in St. Louis they had a big fire.
Oh, wow.
And they lost a lot of the earlier records. My dad's records actually got affected.
Really?
So I think it's like A through M. So they got and you can see them. They're all charred up, and they've been trying to rebuild records. And actually, he actually stayed in the Army an extra year because they couldn't prove when he actually came in, and he wasn't a good record keeper.
Oh, geez.
It's just how that works out. You never think to save like your pay stubs and.
Yeah,
I know. I didn't.
Yeah,
so
no, definitely
my stuff
not.
burns up, but I might have to stay in an extra year too. But yeah, by the time they figured it out and everything, he's like, well, I'll just finish the year out. But there's stuff like Fold 3 and Ancestry, stuff that you can subscribe to. But they got awesome info on there too. So there's a lot of resources. I mean, you got a smartphone, people can do archival research from a phone sitting at a bar drinking a beer now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The knowledge out there is just amazing compared to, years ago.
Yeah. And when you have the lead of, a family name or anything like that, it just, you can run with it. The biggest thing is once you find the lead, you can run with it. Cause like I have a problem with being super specific on things like, movies, books, whatever. Like, if somebody tells me I need to read this or watch this, that's cool, and I can dig from there. But like, I can't seek out new things too easily. I don't know why, but you have the whole of man's knowledge in your pocket.
It's just wild. It's crazy times we live in. To be able to do all this stuff, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and even to think of just right after World War I, like, yep, everything's handwritten on paper or typed on on nice loose paper, and where's it go? Well, somewhere.
That was the theme of the Fort Meade when they had their 100th anniversary. I went down there and helped them out with that.
Yeah.
And the theme of that place, because you have NSA there, you've got all the cyber commands and stuff, and their theme was from horses to cyberspace.
Wow.
Because that post started with cavalry and horse-drawn wagons and stuff like that to. They're doing computer stuff. I don't even know what they do. It's like totally over my head. But
yeah,
just in 100 years, we've gone from that to what we're at now.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's seriously just it's the blink of an eye in mankind's
definitely
time. But yeah, we really have just blown up and exploded, and everything's here. It's crazy, and it's awesome. So November 11th at the Army Heritage Center. So
yeah. I totally forgot about that.
So November 11th, this Veterans Day at the Army Heritage Center in Carlisle, which is just off of
81 drives like right past it. If you drive up 81 and you look off to the side, you'll see like a helicopter there and like forts and stuff. Yeah. That whole weekend, we'll have a couple of us set up there.
That's cool. Are you going to be out in the out the tank? I call it a tank walk. That's definitely not what it's called, but you know that spot where all the tanks are that you can see from the highway. Yeah, you'll just be set up there.
Yeah, we'll actually be out of the trenches because we're trying to do the open warfare thing, and it'll be actually across the street from the trenches, and we'll just have these little vignettes from some of the accounts that I read here today. This is part of my research for putting that together. Yeah. So we'll have some guys with the front lines. Hopefully we'll have some medical there. Hopefully have some of the like a cook set up to show how rations were prepared and what kind of stuff these guys were eating. And
that's cool.
Yeah, it's not like our MREs. It was basic back then.
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna say that's well before vacuum sealed. Everything. Wow.
But it'll be Saturday and Sunday, and I don't know the exact hours. I gotta check with them, but yeah, they'll be out there, rain or shine.
Awesome.
So yeah, if you're in the area, come out and check it out. You can see some of the stuff we talked about, and
take the kids. It's gonna be a good time. Yeah. That's really awesome.
And it's a free museum and a free area. So
yeah, that's fantastic. So well, thanks for your time, Jim. I really appreciate it. So awesome. Thank you so much.